In this video, we're going to cover the installation of the smart motor, motor controller, and supervisor. Prior to starting the installation of the smart motor system, ensure that you have all tools and materials required. Follow all OSHA, local, and national electric codes, as well as standard best practices for motor replacement. The components in this installation include the smart motor, the motor controller, the supervisor, the 7-wire high-voltage motor control cable, and the 7-wire low-voltage motor data cable. These two cables are provided as they are required to provide connections between the smart motor and the motor controller. The number of wires is the key difference in wiring compared to traditional induction motors you've installed in the past. Both the power cable and the motor data cable are labeled and identified on both ends for easy reference and termination. Before starting, please note that if you are rigid mounting the motor, you may need to attach the feet. This requires a metric Allen wrench. Replace the existing motor with the new smart motor. Next, mount the motor controller inside the RTU blower cabinet, or in another approved location per the installation documents. The motor controller can be mounted to any rigid surface with a minimum clear space of 3 inches on all sides. Note the controller itself can be mounted in any position without impacting functionality. Make sure it's located away from excessive vibration, moisture, electromagnetic interference, and explosive or corrosive vapors. There's no limit to the distance the motor controller can be mounted away from the smart motor, but the closer it is to the smart motor, the easier your installation will be. The next step is to install the wiring between the smart motor and the motor controller. We'll go over the proper wiring for these cables now. You can also refer to the wiring diagram that's included with the motor. Connect the motor data cable from the motor controller to the smart motor at the motor junction box. The motor data cable is labeled D1 through D7. This cable has 7 leads on one end and 6 on the other. The side with 7 goes to the motor, the side with 6 goes to the motor controller. Whenever you have questions, simply refer to the wiring schematic. Next, connect the motor power cable from the motor controller to the smart motor at the motor junction box. The motor power cable is labeled P1 through P6 and includes the grounding wire. Again, refer to the wiring schematic as needed. Complete this step by making sure that all the grounds are connected securely on both the smart motor and the motor controller. Follow these steps if the motor controller will be used to control the RTU. First, disconnect the wiring from the thermostat and connect it to the motor controller per the wiring schematic. Next, connect the RTU wiring from the motor controller to the RTU thermostat input terminals or wires. Now we're going to install the line voltage, which can be connected to any phase in any order to power the device. You may be able to reuse the power wiring from the old motor and connect it to the input of the motor controller. Reference the RTU and wiring schematics for correct wiring. It is preferred that the power wiring come from an unswitched power source. This may require moving the power leads from the load side to the line side of the RTU contactor or to another unswitched line power source in the RTU electrical panel. If the installation includes a power meter and current transformers, ensure that the CTs are installed in the correct sequence on the power input cables to the motor controller. Review the power meter installation guide for more details. Zip tie any loose wires and clean the blower cavity of any debris. The final step in the installation process is to connect the supervisor. In some installations, the supervisor may have been installed during an earlier phase, such as for baseline power measurement. If so, run the Modbus cable between the motor controller and the supervisor. It lands on the D2 positive, D2 negative, and common terminals. Like the motor controller, the supervisor should be installed in a location away from excessive vibration, moisture, electromagnetic interference, and explosive or corrosive vapors. It helps to choose a location that provides easy access to wire the I/O terminals on the controller. If an M&V kit was not installed prior, mount the supervisor using the screws in the 4 corner mounting tabs. Follow standard wiring procedures to connect it to the control panel. The supervisor requires 25 VA. Please verify the RTU's transformer is capable of the additional load. If not, you may need to install a new transformer.